Kevin only trusts one person in the world, Clara, the woman who sees him, truly understands him, and protects him like no one else can. Richard watches from a distance, proud of his son but unaware of the deep bond that quietly holds them together. Their peaceful routine, their fragile happiness, is about to be shaken. A new presence arrives. Violet, Richard's girlfriend, charming, confident, but secretly jealous and manipulative. Her arrival threatens to unravel the trust Kevin has built, putting Clara in a position where every move, every choice, could change their lives forever. Can Kevin maintain the trust he holds for Clara? Will Richard realize the truth before it's too late? And how far will Clara go to protect the child she loves as her own? The line between loyalty, deception, and love is about to be tested. Follow our channel now so you don't miss stories like this, full of suspense, emotion, and unforgettable twists. Clara Johnson moved quietly through the spacious kitchen of the Evans mansion, her hands steady as she prepared breakfast for Kevin. The sun had barely risen, and the golden light spilled through the tall windows, illuminating the polished surfaces and casting soft shadows across the marble floor. It was one of those rare, calm mornings, before the house buzzed with the inevitable chaos of daily life. Kevin Evans, 7 years old, sat the small breakfast nook, his legs dangling above the floor. His eyes, usually so guarded, softened as he watched Clara move. There was trust in his gaze, a rare and precious gift he reserved only for her. "Good morning, Kevin," Clara said with a warm smile, placing a plate of scrambled eggs carefully in front of him. "I made them just the way you like. No salt, extra cheese." Kevin's lips curled into a small, hesitant smile. "Thanks, Clara." It wasn't much, but for Clara it was enough. She had seen this boy close himself off from the world, withdrawing after the death of his mother 4 years ago. Most people thought he was difficult, maybe even spoiled, but Clara saw the truth. Kevin was mourning, and no one had given him permission to feel safe, to grieve, to be seen as he truly was. Richard Evans, Kevin's father and the CEO of a global company, was already dressed for work. His tie was perfectly straight, his suit immaculate, but his eyes carried a weight Clara had learned to recognize: worry, guilt, and the occasional pang of helplessness. He was a man used to control, yet here he was, utterly powerless over the fragile world of his son's emotions. "Tomorrow you've got a meeting at 9, remember?" Clara reminded him gently. Richard chuckled softly, a brief light breaking through his usual stoicism. "I don't know how you do it, Clara. Somehow you always know what needs to be done." Clara shrugged, a modest gesture hiding the depth of her understanding. "I just pay attention. I've learned that children notice the little things. The world can be so heavy. If we can make it lighter for them, even a little, why wouldn't we?" Kevin watched the exchange from his seat, his small hands wrapped around his fork. There was a warmth in this household that few could understand, a quiet intimacy that existed between him and Clara. She was more than a caretaker. She was a bridge between his heart and the world he often feared. After breakfast, Clara guided Kevin to the backyard. The morning air was crisp, and dew sparkled on the grass like tiny diamonds. Kevin had a small soccer ball under his arm, and he began to kick it gently against the fence. Clara stayed nearby, her presence calm but firm, a reassuring anchor. "You're getting better at that, Kevin," she said. "Soon you'll be scoring goals like a pro." Kevin laughed, a sound so pure and rare that it tugged at Clara's heart. "You think so?" "I know so," she replied confidently. "But even if you miss, it's okay. Mistakes teach us more than victories sometimes." Kevin's smile widened. "You always make everything sound easy." Clara shook her head, chuckling. "It's not easy. That's why I have to try harder." "You deserve that." Inside, Richard glanced out the window, watching the scene unfold. Clara's influence on Kevin was undeniable. He could see it in the boy's relaxed posture, in the way he smiled without restraint. For all his wealth and power, Richard knew that no money could buy the trust Kevin had in Clara. As the morning progressed, Clara helped Kevin with his homework, making sure he understood each problem without making him feel pressured. Her approach was patient, gentle, and deeply effective. "You don't have to rush, Kevin," she said as he struggled with a math equation. "Remember, learning is about trying, not just getting it right the first time." Kevin paused, then slowly nodded. "I'll try again. That's all I ask," Clara said, her voice warm with encouragement. "Trying is what counts." Richard lingered near the door for a moment, watching. There was gratitude in his eyes, but also something more, quiet admiration for Clara's unwavering dedication. He knew that she wasn't just helping Kevin, she was helping the family heal in ways he couldn't manage alone. Later, as Clara prepared to leave for a brief errands run, Kevin ran to her and hugged her tightly. "Don't go too far, Clara," he whispered. Clara hugged him back, feeling the small heartbeat of trust and love against her chest. "I won't, Kevin. I promise. I'll be back before you know it." She glanced back at Richard, who gave her a nod of silent acknowledgement. There were no words needed. The bond between them was evident, profound, and unbreakable. Clara was more than an employee. She was a cornerstone, a guardian of hearts, and a quiet force of courage and love. As she walked toward the gate, Clara whispered to herself, "The world can be cruel, but here we can make it kind. One act of care at a time." It was in these simple moments, the laughter shared, the trust earned, and the gentle guidance given, that Clara built her invisible bridge, a bridge connecting broken hearts, healing wounds, and nurturing a future where love and understanding could flourish. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, what storms would test her resolve or the bond she had so carefully cultivated, but she held to one truth. Courage, dignity, and love were not just words. They were actions, daily and relentless, shaping the world for those who needed it most. And in that moment, as Kevin kicked his ball with unrestrained joy and Richard watched silently, Clara felt the quiet power of her purpose. True bonds, she knew, could not be broken by fear, doubt, or even misfortune. They could only grow stronger with care, patience, and unwavering faith in the heart of another. Life at the Evans mansion had found a quiet rhythm. Kevin felt safe, secure in the routine that Clara had carefully built for him. She understood him in ways no one else could, his fears, his hesitations, and the tender heart he tried so hard to protect. Richard, observing from a distance, often felt grateful for Clara's presence. Then came Violet Hart. Richard had met her through a business partner, and charmed by her elegance and confidence, he invited her to the mansion. He wanted Kevin to meet her, thinking the boy might warm to someone who could bring light and companionship into their lives. "Kevin," Richard said one afternoon, calling his son into the living room, "I want you to meet someone very special." Kevin looked up from his book, a little wary, and then saw Violet entering the room, smiling brightly. She extended her hand, her voice sweet but practiced. "Hello, Kevin. I've heard so much about you." Kevin's eyes narrowed slightly. He had learned early who he could trust, and Clara had always been the only one. Still, he greeted her politely, though his guarded demeanor was unmistakable. Clara, standing nearby, watched carefully. She could feel Kevin's hesitation and instinctively took a small step closer, ready to support him if needed. Violet, unaware of the protective bubble Clara provided, tried to charm him with games and questions, but Kevin's responses were short, cautious, and polite at best. Clara could sense the growing tension. "Kevin," she whispered softly, "take your time. You don't have to like someone right away." Despite Violet's attempts to win him over, Kevin remained reserved. Clara noticed the small signs, the tightening of his lips, the way he slightly turned toward her for reassurance. It was a silent message. "I trust only you." Violet, noticing the subtle barrier between herself and Kevin, felt a spark of frustration. She had been used to admiration, compliance, and people easily falling into her plans. But Kevin resisted. And worse, Clara's presence was undeniable, constant reminder of someone Violet could not easily overshadow. Over the next few days, tension grew. Violet's smiles became slightly sharper, her compliments to Kevin more pointed, and her attempts to exclude Clara more frequent. She began thinking, almost unconsciously, of ways to assert control, to test the bond between Clara and Kevin, to push Clara out of the picture. Clara, perceptive as ever, noticed the subtle shifts and quietly prepared herself. She knew Violet's type well enough to anticipate that this charm was not harmless. It came with a streak of manipulation, a desire to dominate and interfere. And while she would protect Kevin no matter what, she also knew that Richard might not immediately recognize the danger. One evening, Clara reflected on the day's events while tucking Kevin into bed. "It's okay to feel unsure, Kevin," she whispered. "You don't have to like everyone right away. Some people show their true colors slowly, and we'll see them for what they are when the time comes." Kevin nodded, his small hand gripping hers. I just don't like her trying to change everything," he murmured. Clara kissed his forehead gently. "Then we won't let her. We'll handle it together." Outside the bedroom door, Richard stood quietly, listening to the exchange. He felt a pang of concern. He had wanted Kevin to experience companionship, but he hadn't realized how protective the boy's bond with Clara truly was. And deep down, he also felt a twinge of worry about how Violet's presence might shift the delicate balance of their home. Little did he know, this introduction, innocent in his eyes, was the spark that would set in motion a chain of events challenging trust, loyalty, and the quiet strength that Clara had built for years. Months later, the Evans mansion glimmered under the warm glow of chandeliers. Crystal glasses reflected the soft light, and the table was set with the finest china and polished silverware. Richard had invited important business partners and close friends for a formal dinner, an event meant to impress, to strengthen alliances, and most importantly, to celebrate what he thought was a peaceful household. Clara moved quietly in the kitchen, her focus absolute. Kevin's plate had to be perfect, no peanuts, no risk, nothing that could trigger his allergy. She double-checked every ingredient, every utensil, every dish. "I've got you, Kevin," she whispered softly as she placed the plate on the serving tray. "Nothing will go wrong tonight." Kevin watched her from the corner of the kitchen, a small smile touching his lips. "I trust you, Clara." Clara returned his gaze with warmth. "And I will never let you down." Meanwhile, Violet moved through the mansion with a calculated grace, her smile flawless, but her mind racing. She had a plan. A small, insidious plan designed not to harm Kevin seriously, but to make Clara look careless. Her fingers brushed the food meant for Kevin, just enough to drizzle a small amount of peanut oil onto it. Just enough to make him react, she thought, and then Clara will take the blame. The dinner began. Guests chatted politely, laughter floated through the room, and the clinking of silverware provided a delicate rhythm to the elegant evening. Richard tried to focus on conversations, but his attention kept drifting to Kevin, who ate quietly, guarded by Clara's watchful eyes. At first, everything seemed normal. But then Kevin paused, his fork trembling. His face flushed, lips swelling slightly, eyes wide with panic. "Kevin!" Clara called immediately, her heart racing. She sprang into action, grabbing the epinephrine pen she always kept nearby, her voice calm but urgent. "Kevin, it's okay. Breathe. I've got you." Guests began to notice the sudden tension. Violet, pretending to be shocked, exclaimed loudly, drawing everyone's attention. "How could you let this happen?" Clara froze, a wave of disbelief washing over her. I didn't." Kevin's played, but Violet interrupted, her tone sharp and accusing. "You prepared his food. How could you not check?" How could you be so careless? Kevin's panic intensified, his small body trembling. Clara knelt beside him, administering the medicine and soothing him. It's okay, Kevin. I've got you. You're safe, she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Within minutes, Kevin stabilized, his breathing returning to normal. The ambulance arrived, and the paramedics confirmed that he would be fine. The ordeal, though terrifying, passed quickly, leaving only shock and tension in its wake. Richard, pale and confused, looked from Violet to Clara. The accusations had shaken him. His mind, clouded by worry for his son, sought an easy answer. Violet's polished composure made it easy for him to believe her. Clara, I can't believe this happened, he said softly, his voice filled with a mix of guilt and disappointment. I have to let you go. I'm sorry. Clara's heart sank. She wanted to explain, to defend herself, but Richard's expression left no room for argument. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded silently, swallowing the hurt. I understand, she whispered. In the days that followed, Kevin, feeling the betrayal and loss, withdrew completely. He refused food, shunned games he usually loved, and hid behind his emotions like a protective shield. Richard watched helplessly, guilt gnawing at him as he realized the depth of the mistake he had just made. Clara left the mansion that night carrying more than her belongings. She carried the pain of being wrongly accused, the weight of seeing Kevin's trust fractured, and the quiet determination that she would find a way to reveal the truth. As the door closed behind her, Clara whispered to herself, "This isn't the end. The heart sees what others try to hide. I will protect Kevin, no matter what it takes." The mansion, so glittering and perfect, now felt hollow. Shadows lingered where laughter should have been, and Richard could feel the silent truth pressing in. The wrong choice had been made, and his family's happiness had been put in jeopardy. In that moment, one thing was certain. The next steps would require courage, patience, and the unwavering strength that only Clara possessed. She wasn't defeated. She was just beginning her fight to reclaim trust, restore love, and uncover the deception that threatened everything she held dear. Weeks had passed since that dreadful night at the Evans mansion. Clara moved through her days with quiet determination, heart heavy with the memory of Kevin's frightened eyes and Richard's painful decision. She had been wronged, yet her focus remained on her children, Phil and Chris, and the boy she had come to love like her own Kevin. Opportunities were scarce, and for a mother supporting 3 children, every small job mattered. By chance, or perhaps fate, Clara found a temporary position in the home of a woman named Vanessa, a close friend of Violet. The house was lavish, but the air inside was thick with arrogance and self-importance. Clara carried herself with her usual calm dignity, greeting the staff politely and slipping into her duties with practiced ease. She scrubbed, organized, and tended to the household's needs without complaint, her mind always alert for the smallest details. Vanessa, perched on a plush sofa, barely glanced at Clara as she passed. "Make sure the living room is perfect," she ordered, her tone sharp. "And do try to remember the names of everyone in this house. Not that it matters much. You'll be gone soon enough, I imagine." Clara's lips pressed together, a flicker of irritation rising, but she swallowed it. She had learned long ago that arrogance often blinds people. Most didn't notice who served them, who held the trust of others, or who carried the quiet power of integrity. Vanessa was no different. As Clara tidied a bookshelf in the study, she overheard Vanessa speaking on the phone. Her voice was hushed, but carried enough for Clara to catch fragments. "And I told Violet, the dinner? It worked perfectly." Kevin almost reacted. He was fine, of course, but Clara looked like a fool. She had no idea the peanut oil was in the sauce. "I swear, she nearly ruined everything, but Violet handled it beautifully." Clara froze, her heart pounding. She replayed the words in her mind, catching the critical detail, Violet. Violet had been responsible. Not a mistake, not an accident, but a deliberate plan to incriminate Clara. Her hands tightened on the edge of the shelf, knuckles white. Weeks of uncertainty, self-doubt, and pain now transformed into clarity. The truth was finally within her grasp. She had been framed, and Kevin had suffered not because of her mistake, but because of Violet's deceit. Taking a deep breath, Clara's resolve solidified. She would not let this injustice stand. She would confront Violet, reveal the truth, and reclaim the trust and dignity that had been stolen from her. But Clara was cautious. She knew that exposing Violet would not be simple. It would require strategy, timing, and courage. Every step had to be calculated, every word deliberate. She couldn't risk Kevin's safety, Richard's judgment, or the fragile balance of the household. Later that evening, as she prepared dinner for her own children, Clara whispered to herself, "The truth is my ally, and justice is patient. I will protect Kevin. I will protect my family. And no lie, no arrogance will ever break us." In that quiet moment, she felt a spark of determination ignite, a force that had lain dormant through hardship and betrayal. Clara knew that the next chapter of her life would demand bravery unlike any she had needed before. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Violet's scheme would not remain hidden forever. The foundation of lies and manipulation had begun to crumble, and Clara, steadfast and courageous, was ready to confront it head-on. Kevin had withdrawn entirely. The boy who once laughed freely and chased soccer balls across the yard now sat quietly in his room, refusing meals, refusing play, refusing the world around him. Richard watched helplessly, the weight of his guilt pressing on him like a stone. He had dismissed Clara, the one person who had always nurtured his son's fragile heart, believing Violet's deception instead. It was a truth too heavy to bear, and Richard knew he could not ignore it any longer. With determination and a sense of urgency, he decided to find Clara. He wanted answers, and more than that, he wanted to make things right, not just for Kevin, but for the woman who had proven time and again that her loyalty and integrity were unwavering. Richard traveled to the community where Clara lived, a neighborhood filled with small homes, laughter, and the hum of everyday life. It was vibrant, humble, and filled with people who supported one another. Here, Clara was more than a caretaker. She was a mentor, a friend, a guardian to children who needed guidance and love. Richard watched as she helped a group of kids with homework, her patience steady, her encouragement unwavering. Phil and Chris played nearby, laughing freely under her watchful eyes. It was a different world from the polished mansion he was used to, a world where compassion mattered more than wealth, and dedication outweighed status. "Clara," he called gently as she straightened from a child's side. She looked up, surprised but composed. "Mr. Evans, what brings you here?" "I need to understand," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I need to hear the truth about everything. About the dinner, about Kevin. Please, I need to know what really happened." Clara studied him carefully. She could see the regret in his eyes, the sincerity, and the depth of his concern for his son. She nodded, taking a deep breath. "It's time you know the whole story," she said firmly. Over the next hour, Clara explained Violet's actions in detail: the peanut oil, the accusations, the plan to make her appear careless. Richard listened, shock and disbelief flickering across his face. When she finished, he remained silent for a long moment, the truth settling in. "Ah, I can't believe I doubted you," he admitted, his voice low. "Kevin suffered because I didn't trust the person who loved him most. I was blind." Clara placed a hand lightly on his arm. "It's not too late, Mr. Evans. You can still make it right. Kevin needs you, and he needs the truth to come to light." Richard nodded, a new determination hardening within him. The opportunity came sooner than expected. The Evans mansion hosted a grand engagement party for Richard and Violet. Friends, business partners, and family gathered under sparkling lights, laughter filling the rooms. Richard had a plan: expose Violet publicly and reveal the truth. When the moment arrived, he stepped forward with a microphone, the room falling silent as all eyes turned to him. Violet, radiant in her gown, smiled confidently, unaware of the storm approaching. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard began, his voice calm but firm, "I need to address something very important tonight." The room held its collective breath. Violet's smile faltered. "Richard, what?" she started, but he raised his hand. "This concerns Kevin," he continued, "and the woman who has cared for him more than anyone else, Clara Johnson." A hush fell over the crowd. Gasps and murmurs spread as Richard recounted the facts, emphasizing Violet's actions and the deception that had caused Kevin so much pain. Violet's face turned pale, but she attempted a dismissive laugh. "This is ridiculous. You have no proof." Richard's eyes shifted to Vanessa, Violet's friend who had been involved in the scheme. "Vanessa, you were there. I need the truth now." Vanessa wavered under the attention, the pressure of all eyes on her. Finally, her voice broke through the silence. Yes, it's true. Violet, she put the peanut oil in Kevin's food. She wanted to make Clara look responsible. It was her idea." A collective sigh of relief and shock rippled through the room. Violet's carefully maintained composure crumbled, her social triumph destroyed in an instant. After the chaos, Richard led Kevin to a quiet corner of the garden. The boy looked up at him, eyes wide, a mixture of hope and lingering fear within. "Kevin," Richard said gently, kneeling to meet his gaze, "I know this has been hard. You've been through so much, and I should have trusted the person who always loved you most." Kevin nodded, his small hands gripping Richard's. "I want you to know something important," Richard continued, his voice filled with sincerity. "Clara is not gone. I want to bring her back. She belongs with us, with you, because she is part of this family. And I promise, from now on, we'll do everything to make sure our family is whole again." Kevin's eyes lit up, relief flooding his expression. A small smile began to form as he realized that, finally, the truth had prevailed and the people who truly cared for him would be together again. That night, the mansion felt lighter, filled not with superficial wealth or social appearances, but with a quiet victory of truth, loyalty, and courage. Violet's deceit had been exposed, and Richard had made a promise to his son. Clara would return, and their family would begin to heal. The Evans mansion was quieter than usual as Clara approached the front gates. She carried herself with a calm confidence, though her heart raced with anticipation. The past weeks had been heavy with uncertainty, regret, and the knowledge that the balance of this household had been shaken. But tonight she was returning not as a visitor, not as an outsider, but as someone who belonged, a truth that had finally been recognized. Kevin was in the garden, his small figure silhouetted against the soft glow of the evening lights. His soccer ball rested nearby, but he hadn't touched it for days. Clara's arrival brought a sudden spark to his eyes. "Clara," he exclaimed, running toward her. His voice, full of unrestrained joy, cut through the quiet of the garden like a bell. Clara dropped her bag, crouching down to embrace him. "Kevin. Oh, Kevin, I've missed you so much." The boy clung to her tightly, his relief palpable. Tears of happiness pricked his eyes. I thought you weren't coming back," he whispered. "I promised you, Kevin," Clara said softly, smoothing his hair. "And I always keep my promises." Richard stood at the doorway, watching the reunion unfold. He felt a wave of emotion crash over him. Regret, relief, gratitude, and something deeper, a quiet admiration for the woman who had always cared for his son more than he had. For too long, he had taken her presence for granted, failing to recognize her indispensable role in the family. "Kevin," Richard called, his voice gentle but firm. The boy looked up, his small hands still clutching Clara's. "Come here, son." Kevin hesitated for a moment, then walked toward his father, still holding Clara's hand. Richard knelt down to meet his eyes. I've made mistakes," he admitted, his voice tinged with sorrow. "I let someone else's lies come between us. I neglected you, Kevin. I let fear and doubt take the place of love and trust. And I was wrong." Kevin's eyes shimmered with a mixture of confusion and hope. Clara knelt beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder, offering silent support. Richard continued, his gaze now shifting to Clara. "And Clara, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. Not just for Kevin, but for our family, for our home. You've always been here, patient, steadfast, guiding us through moments we couldn't face alone. I value you more than I can express." Clara's lips curved into a small, heartfelt smile. "Mr. Evans, I don't need thanks. I care about Kevin because he deserves love, safety, and understanding. And I've always treated your family as my own. That's enough for me." Richard shook his head, a hint of a smile breaking through his solemn expression. "No, Clara, that's never enough. You are essential to this family. More than that, you are part of it." Kevin's small hand slipped between theirs, a silent bridge reconnecting the pieces that had been fractured. The boy's laughter, soft at first, grew stronger, filling the garden with warmth and light. Clara hugged him once more, feeling the immense relief of having her heart and his safe again. As the evening continued, Richard began to reflect deeply. He realized how much he had missed, not just the laughter of his son, but the simple, irreplaceable moments of family life. Business deals and social appearances could never replace the joy of being present, a nurturing love and trust. He watched as Clara helped Kevin kick his soccer ball again, her patience unwavering, her care evident in every gesture. For the first time in a long while, Richard felt the profound gratitude of witnessing true dedication and love. He understood now that wealth and status could not substitute for genuine connection. "Clara," he said quietly as she returned to help Kevin, "I want you to know that I see you. I see everything you've done for us. And I don't ever want to take that for granted again." Clara paused, meeting his gaze. There was no need for words beyond that. The mutual understanding, the trust rebuilt, and the respect earned in the quiet struggle of past weeks spoke louder than any apology could. Kevin laughed again, a sound that filled the mansion with renewed life, bouncing off the walls and reaching every corner of the home. Clara smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "See, Kevin, life can be wonderful even after the hardest storms." Richard stood behind him, watching, learning, reflecting. He realized that the journey had not just been about righting a wrong, but about growth for Kevin, for Clara, and for himself. He vowed to be a better father, better man, and a better partner in the life they were building together. That night, as Clara tucked Kevin into bed, she whispered softly, "Home is not just a place, Kevin. It's where love lives, where trust grows, and where hearts heal." Kevin's small voice replied, filled with wonder and relief, "Then I'm home, Clara. I really am." Outside, Richard watched from the doorway, his heart swelling with newfound clarity. Clara's return had not just restored the balance of the household, it had reminded him of what truly mattered. He realized he had neglected the most important things in life: love, trust, and the bonds that hold a family together. And as the night settled over the Evans mansion, one truth shone brightly in the quiet darkness. Clara was not just back. She was home. And with her presence, the family, once fractured by lies and deception, began to heal, laugh, and live fully again. The Evans mansion glowed under the warm afternoon sun. Flowers adorned the garden, their fragrance mingling with the crisp, clean air. Laughter echoed across the yard as Kevin chased Phil and Chris, the children's joyful shouts filling the space with life and energy. Clara stood nearby, watching her children play, a soft smile on her face, feeling the quiet peace of a family finally restored. Richard observed from the veranda, his heart full yet conflicted. He had spent weeks reflecting, wrestling with emotions he had long kept buried beneath duty, social expectations, and fear of vulnerability. Watching Clara interact with the children, seeing her patience, her kindness, her unwavering devotion, he realized there was more than admiration in his heart. He felt love. But the thought of confessing it terrified him. What would the world say? How would his peers react? Would his social circle accept his feelings for a woman they deemed beneath his status? The questions swirled in his mind, a storm of hesitation. He had always been cautious, measured, careful to protect his image. Yet every day spent watching Clara, every laugh shared with Kevin and his own children, made it increasingly clear he could not ignore the truth any longer. That evening, after the children had been tucked into bed and the house had quieted, Richard found Clara sitting alone in the garden, her gaze fixed on the stars beginning to appear in the night sky. He approached slowly, his hands clasped in front of him, heart pounding. "Clara," he began softly, his voice carrying the weight of weeks of reflection. She looked up, surprised but calm, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of curiosity and warmth. "Richard," she said, her tone gentle. "Is everything all right?" He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "No, Clara, everything is not all right. Not until I say this. I've spent too long worrying about appearances, about what others might think, but I've realized something important, something I can't ignore." Clara tilted her head slightly, sensing the seriousness in his voice. "Go on," she encouraged. Richard's eyes locked with hers. "I love you, Clara. I always have, even before I recognized it fully. You've been the heart of this family, the one who has cared for my son and for me in ways I didn't understand at first. I don't want to hide it anymore. I want to be with you, not as a fleeting presence, but as a partner, as a husband, and as a family." For a moment, Clara was silent, her heart racing. She had loved Richard too, though she had been careful, wary of his world and the complications of social expectations. But seeing him now, vulnerable, honest, and sincere, all her doubts melted away. "Richard," she whispered, stepping closer, her hand brushing against his. "I've been afraid too. Afraid of the world, of judgments, of getting hurt. But I see the man you've become, the man who values love, family, and honesty above everything else. I love you too. I always have in a way that matters most." Relief and joy surged through Richard. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, feeling the tension of the past weeks dissolve. The night air seemed warmer, brighter, as though reflecting the happiness blooming between them. Over the next months, life at the Evans mansion flourished. The children played freely, laughter echoing through the halls, and the home was filled with warmth, understanding, and mutual respect. Kevin and Clara's children bonded effortlessly, forming the kind of sibling relationships that only time, love, and shared experiences could nurture. Then came the day that would seal their new beginning, the wedding. The mansion and garden were transformed into a scene of elegance and heartfelt celebration. Friends, family, and even neighbors from Clara's community came together, witnessing the union of two people whose love had survived deception, fear, and trials. Clara walked down the aisle, radiant and confident, her eyes fixed on Richard. He stood at the altar, a mix of all love and gratitude in his expression. The children, Kevin, Phil, and Chris, walked beside them, beaming with happiness, knowing that their family was whole, their hearts safe, and their future secure. The ceremony was simple, yet profoundly beautiful. Clara and Richard exchanged vows that spoke not of wealth or status, but of trust, loyalty, courage, and the deep, unshakable love that had carried them through hardship. "I promise to cherish and honor you," Richard said, his voice steady, "to protect our family, to nurture our children, and to love you with all my heart every day of our lives." Clara's eyes glistened with tears as she responded, "I promise to love you, to stand beside you, and to face life's challenges together. With you, I have found my home, my family, and my heart." As they kissed, the children cheered, laughter and applause filling the garden. Kevin ran into Richard's arms, while Phil and Chris hugged Clara tightly, a perfect circle of love and unity. The mansion, once shadowed by deceit and tension, now shone with warmth, laughter, and the promise of a happy future. Richard, holding Clara's hand, whispered softly, This is the life I've been dreaming of, and I never want to take it for granted again." Clara smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "It's ours, Richard. All of it. Love, family, and every new beginning that comes our way." The sun set behind a mansion, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. The laughter of children, the joy of parents, and the quiet triumph of truth and love filled the air. It was a new chapter, one of hope, unity, and unwavering affection, a family finally whole. As the night settled and the stars sparkled above, one truth stood clear. Love had conquered fear, honesty had triumphed over deceit, and a family, forged in courage and trust, was ready to face all the new beginnings that life would bring. And to everyone following this story, remember, courage, loyalty, and love can transform even the hardest trials into the most beautiful beginnings. Don't forget to follow our channel for more stories that inspire the heart, celebrate resilience, and remind us that true love always finds its way.